Pause, and let this truth settle in your chest. The world takes no oath to be just. You may live by honest measure and yet be betrayed. You may hone your skill until it sings and still find another crowned in your stead. Such is the weather of human affairs. Yet men and women who comprehend this weather do more than endure. They convert its storms into mastery. They survive, and because they survive, they come to govern the quiet spaces where power grows. This hidden faculty, call it dark intelligence if you will, is born not of malice, but of an education in pain. When one is betrayed, humiliated, defeated, the spirit may either crumble or temper itself into something sharp and patient. The latter is the art we shall learn together. How to listen, to watch, to remain still until the hour of exact action arrives. I will call you, in Ralph Waldo Emerson's tongue, to cultivate not cruelty but clarity. Where the ordinary man argues from wounded impulse, the wise man gathers data. Where the crowd burns with indignation, the prudent count the cost. Think of this as moving from checkers to chess. The pieces we lay today are investments in outcomes tomorrow. Before we advance, hold tight to one moral anchor. These insights are for protection and stewardship, not for the wanton harming of the innocent. To wield knowledge is to inherit responsibility. Let that responsibility govern every strategy we name. First, consider the art of calculated opacity. Reveal what serves you and no more. There is strength in the gap between words. When people learn only half the story, they supply the rest with fantasy. And imagination can be a kind of captivity. Emerson observed that the world judges the visible more than the real. Thus you must not exhaust your substance on the urge to explain. Observe the most compelling person you know. They do not pour their history like water into a glass. They answer with reserve. They let a smile hold the room, while a silence does the work of influence. Beware the conversational habit of disarming candor. Many feel obliged to lay bare their fears, motives, and designs as proof of trustworthiness. Yet in doing so, they barter away the very advantage that honesty sometimes creates. Mystery creates magnetism. When you disclose sparingly, curiosity follows. Curiosity draws attention. Attention begets regard. Suppose a casual stranger asks your weekend plans. One reply flattens into predictability. Another keeps motion. Practice saying enough to be true and no more than prudence allows. Your word is currency. Spend it as one careful with coin. Next, learn the adaptive persona. You are not many persons in the wicked sense. You remain yourself, while you choose the clothing of speech and manner suited to each listener. This is not hypocrisy. It is eloquence. Water does not lose its nature when poured from cup to cup. It assumes each vessel without altering its essence. So should you adapt to the shape of circumstance, while your core values remain immutable, you already do this unconsciously. With a grandmother, you speak with softness. In a courtroom, you speak with precision. Make the practice intentional. Study the person before you speak. Do they hunger for facts? Supply them. Do they hunger for heart? Supply that. Do they hunger for vision? Paint the horizon for them. Adaptive persona is translation. It is the language of leadership, for it makes strangers feel understood and allies feel seen. Yet guard against the peril of becoming a mask that has eaten the face. To adapt is not to amputate your integrity. The diamond has many facets. It is still one stone. Keep your non-negotiables close. Honesty, courage, mercy, those anchors that make adaptation moral rather than merely theatrical. When you master adaptive persona, you will cease to be misunderstood. You will instead become the one who can meet any mind and be met in turn. Third, embrace the principle of detachment. Far from coldness, detachment is liberation. A heart unenslaved by outcome sees with greater clearness and decides with greater courage. Most men are yoked by their attachments. They consent to mistreatment because fear of loss binds them to unworthy chains. To be free is to have less to lose in the hands of others. Emerson counseled the soul to trust itself above the chorus of approval and blame. Here that counsel serves as moral armor. Imagine two negotiators. One has constructed life around a single contract. The other keeps options, reserves, and a steady mind. which stands taller? The latter, whose hands do not tremble at the prospect of loss. Detachment returns to you clear sight in the moment of choice, and this clarity is power. Do not mistake detachment for indifference. Care deeply, but do so without desperation. Love without clinging, labor without supplication. Begin small. Resist the compulsion to answer every slight, the temptation to win every debate, the need to be adored by all. As you loosen the grip on lesser outcomes, you will find people accord you a new sort of respect. Not brittle applause, but steady acknowledgement. The soul that is not commanded by whim becomes hard to command. Fourth, cultivate silent leverage. True sway is gentle. It moves others by presence rather than by shouts. The slightest stillness in a room can tip the scale of a conversation. The graceful pause can make others reveal their plans. There is a discipline to being quiet that is not passivity, but patient agency. Position yourself so that your mere being alters the tenor of affairs. Make yourself indispensable through service, not through boastful claim. Become the one who solves the knot others have abandoned. In time, people will bring you their knots willingly. The power of pause cannot be overstated. Most men speak to fill a vacuum, and thus reveal what they need not reveal. In silence, a rival exposes his bargain. A friend discloses his fear. In negotiation, keep alternatives hidden until pressure dissolves. When others sense your options, they bargain differently, even without your having pronounced them. In love and labor, add value before you request recognition. Such steady giving reaps loyalty without demand. The long game is the province of silent leverage. Plant and wait, for seasons ripen slowly. The humble craftsman who brings steady skill to every problem will be consulted when the arena grows perilous, because steady hands are rarer than loud voices. Silent leverage builds authority as a river builds richness. Fifth, practice psychological echo. The deepest influence is the mirror. Reflect not merely words, but the feelings, hopes, and fears beneath them. This is the art of listening to the music behind another's speech and playing its harmony back to them. No trickery, only attention so fine it becomes insight. When a person feels seen in the marrow of their need, walls fall and trust grows. You do not supply imposed answers. You reveal their own better desires, casting their unrest into a golden outline of aspiration. If a colleague sighs, "My work wears me thin," do not rush to job boards. Reflect instead, it seems your effort is not honored here. Or perhaps you long for a task that moves you more. Once you can name the ache beneath talk, you may also present remedies framed in their terms, not yours. Offer security to the anxious, honor to the unseen, freedom to the constrained. Such tailoring is not guile. It is humane diplomacy. When people hear their own truth mirrored with generosity, they accept counsel rather than resist it. This is not manipulation but translation. You render another's inner weather legible and thus make helpful direction possible. Practice, and you will find doors open that formerly resisted force. Consider further how calculated opacity functions in the theater of relationships. When you reveal only slices of your thought, you invite the other to step into the play with curiosity rather than turn away in boredom. People prefer to imagine the hero as greater than he shows. Give them room for that benevolent imagination. In business, do not spill strategy in the first boardroom. In friendship, do not disclose wounds until trust is truly earned. There is generosity even in restraint. You can serve your force for the hour when it is needed most. Reflect now on adaptive persona with a concrete exercise. Before an important meeting, spend 5 quiet minutes composing a city of impressions. Ask who will sit at that table, what language each soul favors, which fear most guides them. Prepare not a script, but a set of gestures of speech. One phrase to honor reason, one to honor feeling, one to honor future vision. Enter the room with the humility of one who comes to translate hearts to each other. You will be astonished how quickly resistance softens. On detachment, permit this parable. A captain at sea who fears losing the helm will fix his gaze narrowly and fail to read the stars. Detachment frees the eyes to see the shifting wind. It grants navigation rather than paralysis. Detach enough to choose wiser courses, but not so much that you cast off compassion. Silent leverage requires ritual. Keep a private ledger of small solutions. Add to it when others scream for instant answers. Over seasons, this quiet stock becomes a library of reliability. When trouble comes, you will have calm remedies. Men will seek you not for spectacle, but for steadiness. When you practice psychological echo, refine the music. Notice cadence and color, then match and lead. Speak their truth back with possibility, not only naming the wound, but hinting at the mending. People do not merely seek reflection, they thirst for direction. These 5 forms, reserved revelation, adaptive presentation, detachment, silent leverage, and empathetic echo, form the scaffold of the guardian mind. They are the beginning stones of dark intelligence when that phrase is taken to mean the disciplined use of wisdom forged in trial. Keep this caution. Power without conscience is a rusted sword. Emerson taught that character is supreme, and so must your use of these arts be governed by a steady ethical law. Let self-mastery lead to service. Let your increased influence enlarge the good of those around you. In closing this first chapter, practice one small experiment for 7 days. Choose one art, opacity, adaptation, detachment, silence, or echo, and enact it faithfully. Journal the differences. Note how your voice shifts, how the world answers, and how your inner weather changes. Habit shapes destiny. Form this habit well, and destiny will be kinder to your future self. Seek clarity each morning. Choose restraint each evening, and keep the heart open while the mind is guarded. Thus begins your work. We now press onward into the darker corridors of human craft, not to dwell in cruelty, but to learn the temper of prudence. These remaining arts of strategy are the scaffolding upon which a life of resilient purpose may be built. Remain mindful. Power without conscience is like a ship without a compass. Let the moral lodestar guide each maneuver. 6. Contemplate. Ambiguous morality. That difficult, often maligned virtue which refuses to wear its righteousness as a single garment. Ambiguous morality is not moral vacancy. It is moral discernment in a world that refuses simple answers. Emerson taught that life often demands thought rather than precept, and here we must think without flinching. The good act may sometimes appear ugly. The harsh decision may sometimes bear the bloom of long-term mercy. To act with ambiguous morality is to measure consequences with a larger scale than the immediate heart's delight. Picture a leader who must choose between sparing one deceptive soul and protecting the many who depend upon truth. Which action is kinder? Which is crueler? There can be no formula stamped upon such moments, only the slow arithmetic of consequence. The man of pragmatic ethics asks not, "What will make me loved?" but "What will preserve the common good?" He accepts unpopularity when it serves a greater fidelity. He does not wallow in cynicism. He embraces responsibility for the costs his choices impose. Ambiguous morality requires an interior tribunal. Set your non-negotiables and define the ends worthy of difficult means. Let your code be public enough that your conscience is accountable, yet private enough to allow the hardness required to protect more than just your immediate circle. Beware the seduction of hypocrisy. To say your aim is the public good and to act for private gain is to corrupt this trait. Let your ambiguous choices be explicable in the cold light of retrospect. If you must choose a painful remedy, ensure that healing follows. Thus the patient steward chooses the thorn when it opens the way for the flower. He endures the hour of misliking that a greater season may dawn. 7th, practice controlled exposure, cousin to our earlier arts of opacity and reserve. In the age of broadcast confession, Restraint itself is rebellion. When everything is displayed, discretion becomes currency. The person who shares selectively holds in their hands a reputation shaped rather than shredded by rumor. Emerson would call this the economy of the soul. What you reveal declares not only to others, but to yourself what you value and why. Controlled exposure is deliberate. You calibrate your disclosures for timing, audience, and purpose. You keep a reservoir of capacity that you may draw upon when exigency demands. In doing so, you both surprise and sustain the regard of those around you. Consider how a skill revealed slowly appears like a river that enlarges over time, rather than a torrent that wastes in a single flood. A craftsman who unveils his mastery one season at a time teaches his neighbors that his work endures beyond spectacle. In the theater of negotiation, concealment of all your constraints is not dishonor, it is strategy. Reveal too much, and you will be plundered by opportunists. Conceal everything, and you will be mistrusted. Thus, the art is one of balance, sufficient, openness to build trust, measured reserve to preserve agency. Controlled exposure extends to the modern ledger of digital presence. Each post, each utterance, leaves an impression in the gallery of the world. Curate that gallery with intent. Let your public persona be a lantern that draws the right guests, not a billboard that invites the ravenous. Remember Emerson's counsel to the soul. Self-trust is the first secret of success. Guard the images you cast into the world. They will be used to judge you long after your immediate intention fades. Eighth and last, cultivate outcome obsession. Here is what divides talkers from builders, prophets of vanity from artisans of result. To be obsessed with outcome is not to worship expedience but to cherish effect. The man who prizes results above pride asks different questions. He asks not, "How shall I be proven right?" but rather, "What will move this mountain an inch?" He measures his days by what they produce, not merely by how noble his intentions appear in the chorus of self-admiration. Emerson cautioned that thoughts are glorious when they are acted. Likewise, plans unfulfilled rot into self-regard. The worker who tilts toward outcome fashions his life into service because achievement becomes the language of care. Not for self-aggrandizement, but for effectuating the good he envisions. Outcome obsession teaches economy of effort. Seek the spike of disproportionate return. Identify the few acts that produce the majority of your harvest and defend them jealously. This is not slavishness to results, it is fidelity to effective stewardship. Yet temper this obsession with ethical boundaries. Outcomes that trample the dignity of others are not victories, but wounds. Define the victory that honors integrity and widens the common good. When your aim includes the welfare of others, outcome. Obsession becomes a force of communal flourishing rather than solitary triumph. A leader obsessed with the right outcomes is willing to shift tactics, jettison pride, and learn without shame when evidence dictates change. Such flexibility is not weakness, it is wisdom. Now, having examined these 8 pillars, let us translate them into habits of living. Theory without practice is a book unread. Craft demands rehearsal. Begin with small experiments. For 1 week, choose a single trait and enact it as a ritual. If you select opacity, answer 3 ordinary questions with brevity. Note how attention shifts. If you choose adaptive persona, enter 3 conversations with the specific aim of matching the listener's language and tone, then record what changes. If detachment is your test, walk away from a petty argument and observe how your heart steadies. For silent leverage, practice pausing. When provoked, count 2 full seconds before answering. For psychological echo, respond to 1 person each day by reflecting back their unspoken concern before offering advice. For ambiguous morality, practice, asking what consequence you are willing to accept for each hard choice. For controlled exposure, post one image, one thought, or one success less than you might have. Watch how mystery reconfigures regard. For outcome obsession, pick one project and ask, what single action will move it most? Do that action. Journal the experiment. Emerson counseled introspection as the scholar's staff. Write what you do, and then examine what occurs. Did people respond differently? Did your inner weather shift? Did doors close or open? Over time, these experiments become habits. Habits become character, and character becomes destiny. But we must return, always, to the moral barometer. To possess strategy is not to be released from ethical demand. Rather, strategy intensifies responsibility. Emerson insisted that the end of all wisdom is the decorum of action. Each technique you adopt must be weighed against the measure of human flourishing. If a method yields personal power but leaves ruin in its wake, abandon it. If a maneuver protects the weak and enlarges dignity, refine it. Let your life be balanced upon the two pillars, effectiveness and benevolence. And what of fear that these arts will harden the heart? The cure is simple and profound. Practice them in service of care. Use opacity to preserve surprise for joy, not deceit. Use adaptation to translate truth into compassion, not to veil trickery. Use detachment to choose wisely, not to refuse love. Use silent leverage to become necessary, not to become a puppet master. Use echo to heal, not to harvest. Use ambiguous morality to protect the many, not to rationalize cruelty. Use controlled exposure to curate trust, not to hoard esteem. Use outcome obsession to build what benefits the world, not merely to gild ambition. A life governed by these lights becomes at once more secure and more generous. You will find that as your powers increase, your capacity to give also enlarges. The strong need not grasp, they may offer. The wise, shielded from manipulation, can extend more authentic help. Emerson would remind you that the truest power is that which enables greater love. Let us close this part with 3 commitments you may carry into practice. First, commit to one small discipline each dawn. Before the world presses its claims, repeat silently your chosen virtue for the day: clarity, patience, courage. Let it be your north. Second, record one instance nightly where your strategy served the good of another. This trains the eye not only for effectiveness, but for benevolence. Third, name one non-negotiable, a line you will never cross. Protect that line at cost, and let it be the anchor of all ambiguous acts. When you hold these promises, the arts of guarded influence will not debase you. They will refine you into a steward of power. You will become, in Emerson's highest sense, self-reliant and therefore capable of true service. We will carry into the concluding part the architecture of application. How to weave these traits into leadership, into friendship, and into the quiet craft of a protected life. There we shall set practical rituals, scripts for conversation, and ethical checkpoints, so you may enter the world equipped and unafraid. Until then, practice one small experiment in earnest. Attend to the inner tribunal. Let conscience be the first minister of strategy. Let usefulness be the voice that tempers cunning. Armed thus, you will not merely survive the world's injustice, you will become a guardian of a purer order, the architecture of applied power. Let us now pass from contemplation into action. For philosophy that never touches the soil soon withers in abstraction. The traits of dark intelligence, transformed through Emerson's lens into luminous discernment, must now find their place in daily living, in how you lead, how you love, and how you dwell within yourself. Each of these domains tests the sincerity of your learning. It is easy to seem wise in solitude. It is in company that wisdom earns its wage. Begin with leadership, the public theater of character. The Emersonian leader does not dominate by command, but influences by example. He reveals only what serves the work, and conceals what serves vanity. He adapts without betrayal of his values, speaks seldom but with purpose, and measures his worth by outcomes, not applause. His team senses in him the rare blend of patience and resolve. that invisible current which keeps a ship steady when the winds of panic rise. In leadership, controlled exposure becomes transparency with intention. You share vision, not gossip. Direction, not distraction. Silence becomes not absence, but authority. You listen so deeply that others hear themselves in your presence. And you practice the discipline of ambiguous morality, the courage to choose the harder right over the easier kind, when the welfare of the many depends upon your decision. Such a leader does not seek to be loved above all else, for affection follows integrity. He earns loyalty by consistency, not charisma, by purpose, not performance. To the world he may appear enigmatic, even austere, but beneath that restraint lies warmth enough to sustain trust for years. The practice of self-governance leadership of others begins with mastery of self. Emerson wrote, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." The darkly intelligent person, tempered through defeat and observation, must continually refine the self as both laboratory and instrument. Begin each morning in stillness. Review the day ahead not as a battlefield to be conquered, but as a field to be cultivated. Ask, what energy will I bring into each encounter? The self-aware warrior chooses his tone as carefully as his weapons. Use detachment here as emotional hygiene. When a disappointment arrives, a betrayal, a delay, an insult, resist the immediate impulse to retaliate or despair. Instead, observe your own reaction as though studying weather from behind glass. "Ah," you say to yourself, "a storm passes through me. Let me note its pattern before it breaks upon my judgment." This habit converts reactivity into reflection, pain into data, and humiliation into material for growth. The more often you practice it, the stronger your interior muscle of composure becomes. One day, a crisis that would have once shattered you will find no purchase. You will stand unshaken, not because the world has softened, but because you have strengthened the walls within. And yet, never mistake self-governance for self-imprisonment. Emerson valued spontaneity as much as self-control. The disciplined soul must also dance. The one who learns cunning must also remember wonder. Without joy, your strategy turns to dust. Without gratitude, your power grows cold. Therefore, balance every act of calculation with one act of creation. Write, sing, walk beneath the open sky, or sit in silence with those you love. Relationships, the field of reflection. Now, we turn to the delicate art of human connection, the place where strategy meets heart. The emotionally reactive person moves through relationships like a storm through glass. The strategically intelligent person moves like wind through the forest, felt but never destructive. Psychological echo is your compass here. To understand another person truly is to give them sanctuary. When you reflect back their hidden needs, you dissolve defensiveness and create a space where truth can emerge. Practice this with genuine care. Hear not only the words, but the tremors beneath them. When a friend complains, do not rush to repair. Mirror first. When a rival boasts, listen for insecurity. When a lover withdraws, listen for fear. Every word is a signal sent from a deeper current. In this listening, you build influence not through manipulation, but through resonance. The person who feels understood will often move mountains for you, and you will not need to push. Yet remember, strategic empathy is not servitude. Echo does not mean echoing forever. At times, silence is the most compassionate reply. At others, truth must be spoken, though it cuts. You owe others your honesty, not your compliance. In relationships, controlled exposure also has its role. Reveal yourself in chapters, not all at once. Let others earn access to your story through consistency, not charm. In this way, intimacy becomes earned reverence rather than reckless confession. When you open your heart selectively, you invite not the curiosity of strangers, but the trust of equals. The ethical boundary, it would be impossible to end without returning to the spine that holds all these lessons upright. Ethics. Emerson's wisdom insisted that self-reliance does not mean self-justification. The moment you use intelligence to harm, you deform it. The instant strategy becomes deceit. It corrodes the soul that wields it. So how does one guard against corruption? By making conscience a constant companion, not a guest you summon when convenient. Before each decision, pause and ask 3 questions. Does this serve truth? Does this preserve dignity, mine and others? Would I defend this choice if all the world could see it? If you can answer yes to all 3, proceed without hesitation. If not, withdraw. A single night's sleep is worth more than any victory that keeps you awake. You will find that true power expands only within the boundaries of integrity. The cunning man may win for a season. The ethical man endures for generations. Strategy can conquer the hour. Your character conquers the century. Emerson's quiet commandments of power to live wisely in an unjust world. Remember these Emersonian principles of dark intelligence transfigured into light. See without reacting. Observation is higher courage. Act without boasting. The deed shines brightest when it needs no witness. Love without begging. Freedom is the purest form of affection. Speak without excess. Truth whispered carries further than lies shouted. Work without self-pity. Effort ennobles when it flows from purpose, not from resentment. If you build your life upon these quiet laws, you will find yourself untouchable by petty betrayals. The world may still conspire, but its noise will not reach your inner chamber. Legacy, the fruit of strategic goodness at the summit of understanding. You will realize that dark intelligence, properly purified, is nothing more than enlightened self-reliance. It is not about dominance. It is about endurance, not about manipulation, about mastery. Its ultimate reward is not control over others, but serenity within oneself. Ask yourself at the close of each year, what has my intelligence built? What suffering has it lessened? What truth has it preserved? These questions will measure your life more honestly than any applause, for legacy is not found in monuments, but in influence, the invisible shaping of lives through character. When others recall your name, may they not say merely, "He was clever," but rather, "He was steady," and his steadiness gave others courage. That is the Emersonian triumph, to turn cunning into conscience, strategy into service, and intellect into illumination. Closing benediction. So, my friend, as you step back into the world, remember this. You will meet deceit. You will witness unfairness. You will taste defeat. Let none of these events diminish you. Let them polish you instead. Be like the oak that deepens its roots when the storm grows fierce. Be like the river that finds new paths when rocks obstruct its flow. Be like the flame that burns cleanest when fed with little air. Carry mystery in your voice, patience in your judgment, and purpose in your heart. Stand unshaken, speak softly, and act decisively. For the world honors not the loud, but the luminous. Let your intelligence be a lantern, not a dagger. Let it light the way for others who stumble in the dark. And when you find yourself betrayed once more, smile gently, for you already know the lesson. You cannot control the fairness of the world, but you can master the fairness of your own response. That mastery is power. That restraint is victory. And that calm, unwavering center within you, that is the truest intelligence of all.